Mustangs, like the one I'm in, are in the news again for not very good reasons. Today, we're going to investigate why some Mustang owners are actually suing Ford and whether or not I, as a fellow Mustang owner, should be worried. Stay tuned. Nope, still hasn't gotten old, guys. Still love the noise of this car, but we're not here to talk about that. Today, we're here to talk about a class action lawsuit that was filed by Mustang owners against Ford, and it centers around the MT82 manual transmission made by Getrag for Ford. And basically, it's not good, guys. It is not good. Effectively, transmissions are, worst case scenario, failing, breaking. Not something I really wanted to hear when I'm throwing a ton of horsepower at it. Yeah. So today we're going to kind of take a look at the lawsuit. We're going to effectively figure out what the heck these guys are complaining about. Is there any fix? And should Ford replace the gearboxes with something a lot more stout, a lot more reliable? So first, we're going to dive into the actual lawsuit itself. Now, I'm going to be pulling all this information from an article written in Car and Driver. So according to the lawsuit itself, among other problems, the transmission slips, jerks, clashes gears, and harshly engages, has premature internal wear, increased shift efforts, inability to drive, and eventually suffers catastrophic failure. Repairing or replacing the defective parts does not resolve the transmission defect because the customer is inherently left with defective parts or receives another defective part in its place. The lawsuit also claims that Ford was aware of this problem as far back as 2010 and that the affected vehicles range from 2011 to 2019. Basically, they're saying Ford knew this problem existed and did nothing to fix it. So what does kind of all of this mean? Is this lawsuit founded? Is it unfounded? Is the transmission garbage, or is it just a single part on the transmission that is no good? These are all very important questions because if you've watched any of my other videos surrounding this car, you know my intentions are not to leave this car stock. Far from it. We're going to be throwing a lot of horsepower at this thing. This car's end goal is to have enough power and enough traction and enough driver skill. Last one's a bit... enough of all of those things to get this car into the 10-second range. And as a manual car, trusting your transmission is a enormous, huge part of getting into the 10s. You want to know that you can get into gear, you can shift quickly, not, well, let's just say aggressively dumb, and still get down the track in a fashion that will end up with the right amount of power and traction, result in a 10-second quarter-mile pass. So this is a big issue, guys. This is more than a big issue. Will this transmission last when I chuck a ton of horsepower at it? Now, a lot of these failures seem to stem from the fact that people are not getting into gear fully. They're not accurately shifting gears. Now, I'm not putting the onus on the owners themselves, but a lot of these issues tend to stem from being partially in gear or partially out of gear and applying even stock power levels to the transmission, and the transmission ultimately either stripping gears, failing, or at best case, slipping or grinding gears. Now, I've done a pretty substantial amount of research on this. I've consulted a Mustang expert who knows these platforms inside out and backwards, and it seems to all stem from the inaccuracy of the shift action itself. Now, when I first drove this car, and I'm not talking about my car specifically, I'm talking about the Mustang GT as a whole, specifically the 2015 and newer, I remember leaving that test drive, and again, I only had the car for about an hour or two. I was left very wanting when it came down to the manual gearbox. It was inaccurate. The 1-2 shift, you had to be, I don't want to say forceful, but definitely assertive with your shifts. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't the most accurate shift action in the world, and it really ruined the entirety of the experience when it came down to, you know, the test drive. That being said, I've owned this car for about 6 months now, and I can tell you that that was one of those instances where you kind of make a conclusion based on an hour or so with a car as a reviewer, and sometimes it kind of comes out, well, unfounded, or the more you drive the car, you kind of basically get used to it, and it's not that big of a deal. And I can sit here and tell you this was one of those cases. Having driven this, the transmission feels great. It's a much shorter throw than a lot of other cars I've owned, save for maybe my BMW M3, and even then it's really close. But it is far from a perfect shift action, far from a perfect transmission. It is still inaccurate. What you're seeing right now is the car is in gear, and the gear stick, it moves almost like it's in neutral, like when you, hey, better wobble it, make sure it's in neutral. We've all seen the meme, we've all laughed, we all kind of understand what I'm getting at. And that is where I think a lot of these issues come from. And that's not really my opinion, that's basically, I've consulted experts. Like I said, I've consulted a Mustang expert, I've consulted the internet, and effectively it kind of all boils down to exactly that. The shift action on these transmissions is less than ideal, and that is leading to inaccurate shift, being partially in gear, applying power, and bang, transmissions are breaking. And is it a defect that warrants a recall? Probably, but if you own a 2015, or I'm sorry, a 2011 or newer Mustang all the way up to 2019, I think the simple fix for the MT82 is to get yourself a high quality short throw kit. And I'm talking a full remote shifter replacement kit. This will, one, remove pretty much all of the slop, and it's definitely something we're gonna be doing to this car before we start adding really big horsepower. It'll remove a lot of the slop, like I said. It'll lead to more accurate shifts. It will lead to more consistent shifts, and it will stop those power on under partial gear engagement situations that seems to be breaking these transmissions. Now, Getrag is known for making some legendary transmissions that can handle a ton of horsepower. The 6-speed V160 that comes in the Mark IV Supra, it can handle almost 1,000 horsepower with very basic mods to the transmission itself. The 6-speed transmission that come in E46 M3s, both the manual gearbox and the SMG gearbox, which are effectively the same thing, just in the SMG hydraulic actuators are doing the job your left foot, don't clutch with your right foot, your left foot does during shifting. Those can handle a ton of horsepower. So Getrag, as a manufacturer, makes very high quality transmissions. It's just in this instance, I believe the shift action is letting down the rest of their engineering. That's probably, if Ford ever decides to send out a recall, the fix they're gonna do is basically replace the entirety of the shift action. Or if you don't wanna wait for a recall, go get like a Barton or any of those types of manufacturers, a high quality short throw kit that again replaces the entirety of the action, and it should at very least alleviate these broken transmissions, or alleviate the risk you may have of busting up your transmission. Because, like I keep saying, this car is going 10 seconds at some point in the not too distant future, and we want to make sure all of our parts are reliable. And there are plenty of people out there running the MT82 and going well over 800 horsepower, 750, 800 foot-pounds of torque at the flywheel. So we know these gearboxes can handle it, they just need a little love. And that pretty much does it for this video, guys. If you liked the video, consider subscribing, smash that thumbs up, and hit the notification bell so you get all of our content as we release it. If you want to follow us on social media, it's at Shifting Lanes. Me personally, I'm at Kennedy83. If you want to help support the channel, right down below me, we have a Teespring account. In there you can find some really awesome swag that you can buy, and as an added bonus, it supports the channel, and every dollar we make from selling that stuff, we put right back into creating content for you guys. The MT82 transmission, guys, it's creating quite a stir right now. I think it can be a simple fix, but only time really is going to tell on whether or not these things are going to need to be completely replaced, or just, like I said, the shift action. But as for this video, guys, that's pretty much a wrap. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.